You've learned a method for reading Paul's epistles and trying to follow the logic. We use the 5 steps. In this video, I'm going to show you a few more tricks that you can use as you use the 5 steps. The first one is just how to do it a lot quicker. The second one is a strange thing Paul does when he goes on asides in his logic. And the third one is what to do with relative pronouns. So let's have a look at these things. Here's a passage that demonstrates one of these things. 1 Thessalonians 2, 1-4. First of all, I'm going to do the first 3 steps at the same time. So for is a conjunction. So I'm going to mark it in yellow. We'll just get that out of the way a bit. For you yourselves know, there's a verb, brothers and sisters. That is another conjunction. So I'll put that on a new line. That our visit with you was, is a verb, was not without result. On the contrary, that is a conjunction. It means a contrast or opposite. So I'm going to put that on a new line. On the contrary, after, that's a conjunction as well. So everything's been going well so far. I've had a conjunction, a verb, but now I've got 2 conjunctions in a row. That's strange. After we had previously suffered, and there's another conjunction, were treated, that's a verb, were treated outrageously in Philippi. So let's put that one on a new line. As you know, as is another conjunction. That's as you know, there's a verb. So let's put all that on a new line. As you know, we were emboldened. Now we've got a verb, but we didn't have a conjunction. So what's happened? We had 2 conjunctions in a row here with no verb. We've got 2 verbs here with no conjunction. And what he's actually done, he started speaking on the contrary, and then he's interrupted himself with an aside. So if I rearrange this a bit, you'll see what's happening. Let's get that down out of the way. Let's put this on a new line and indent it so you can see all of this here is actually an aside. So if you read it without that bit, it makes sense. For you yourselves know, brothers and sisters, that our visit with you was not without result. It wasn't a failure. On the contrary, we were emboldened by our God to speak the gospel of God to you in spite of great opposition. That all flows. That makes sense. That's his point. And this is just an aside. After we had previously suffered and were treated outrageously in Philippi, as you know, that's telling you when he visited. And so Paul will sometimes do that. He'll put 2 conjunctions in a row, and the second one is actually introducing an aside before he goes back to the main point. If you look at this next passage, he does a similar thing. Let's have a look at this one. This is why, so there's a form of conjunction. It's saying, what I've just told you is the reason. This is why we constantly thank God. There's a verb. Because, so there's another conjunction. He's going to give the reason. Because, I'll put it on a new line. When. Now we've got another conjunction again. When you received the word of God. So this looks like he's doing the same thing, these 2 conjunctions in a row. So I'll break it, and it seems like this is probably an aside to the main argument. When you receive the word of God, let's do a new line here, that you heard from us, you welcomed it. And again, here we get to a point where there's no conjunction, and that flows from here, from the because. So this is why we constantly thank God, because you welcomed it not as a human message, but as it truly is. And this is just an aside telling us when. And so that's exactly the same as what we saw in the other one. Let's keep going. You welcomed it not as a human message. We've got a but. So let's highlight that one. But as it truly is a verb, the word of God, which also works effectively in you who believe. Now, this is the next bit that shows you something else. What do we do with this bit? We've got the word which. Well, which is actually a relative pronoun. I'm going to put it into orange, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. Which also works effectively in you who believe. What is the word which here doing? It's referring back to what he just mentioned, the word of God. The word of God, which also works effectively in you. It means it's the word of God which is working in them. So I would put the which, sounds a bit funny, doesn't it? Normally I would indent it. No, it's not letting me indent. Maybe if I drag this across. Over here with the word of God. Let's just put it like that. So relative pronouns if you've done grammar, you'll realize they point back or refer back to a noun that we've already mentioned. In this case, he mentions the word of God, and he could have said, the word of God also works effectively in you, but that sounds really clumsy. So we use the word which, and it means the thing I just referred to. And if you go back up here, because when you receive the word of God that you heard from us, this word is doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to change it to orange. It's actually a relative pronoun referring back again, in this case, to the word of God. And if I was doing this, I would actually indent that one over here under the word of God. That just shows that that's what it's giving us more information about, or explaining a bit more fully.